welcome to episode 25 of the Hard Truth About B2B eCommerce. I'm your co-host, Isaiah Bollinger. Unfortunately, our lovely co-host, Tim, is unavailable today, so I'm going to be doing this myself today, and he'll be back for the next podcast. And before I continue, have to mention our awesome sponsor, Punch Out To Go, who's actually one of our previous guests was on from Punch Out To Go, who was really amazing. I was really, really impressed by Jessica. And for all of you who don't know, Punch Out To Go is a global B2B integration company specializing in connecting commerce platforms with e-procurement and ERP applications. So essentially, they're an iPaaS technology that seamlessly links business applications to automate the flow of purchasing data. So with their solution, Punch Out To Go, you can immediately reduce integration complexities, punch out catalogs, electronic purchase orders, invoices, and other B2B sales order automation documents in order to accelerate business results. So they do a lot, and if you're trying to automate things in B2B and you just want to talk to them, they're very friendly. Brady, the CEO, is a good guy. Just send them a note, talk to them, and they're honest people. So I think they'll tell you yes or no if they're the right place to help you. So I'm really excited to bring on our guest last minute. We literally decided like a day or two before the podcast. David Stillson, really appreciate you reaching out on LinkedIn. You're the senior architect, kind of leading the development on, like you said, it's not just B2B, it's B2B e-commerce, B2C e-commerce, kind of everything e-commerce for Lippert components. So tell us more, what does that mean?
So it means I'm in a tangled web of projects at all times. It's a lot of fun. I've got a great team. And thanks for having me on the show. I'm really excited.
Yeah, I think we're going to have a lot of very intricate things to talk about because you've got so much experience kind of in the weeds. So, I want to get into the details, but I also want to keep it somewhat high level. So for people that aren't maybe as technical as you are, they can also kind of understand, these concepts and the things that you've learned over your career. So let's start it off with, you've been doing B2B for a little while now. You've worked for a few different companies. I think you mentioned one was kind of smaller, and then now obviously you're at a much larger company, Lippert Components, which I believe you guys are probably, are you guys $1 billion plus? I don't know if you're allowed to say, but
yeah. Oh no, it's we're publicly traded, so it's all
I didn't realize
there.
that.
We're over 2 billion now.
Yeah. Okay. That's what I thought. So you guys you've been in the big boys, and then you've seen kind of the smaller business, kind of the more traditional B2B that a lot of, I think, our audience is more that, 100-person company, family owned kind of B2B company. So where I'm going with this is, tell me a little bit about the evolution of the culture in B2B commerce that you've seen and where you see it going. What are some of the kind of like lessons that you've learned, or maybe even advice you've had around building culture to be successful with B2B e-commerce? Because I truly believe that culture is a big problem, and it's like you're overcoming this culture that was historically not B2B e-commerce, and now you're trying to become B2B e-commerce, and it's not as simple as you think. You don't just like press a button, build the site, and then everyone just starts ordering,
Right. Yeah, I think the big thing is getting people on board with the idea of B2B e-commerce. And you almost have to take away the E in front of e-commerce sometimes and just get people to realize that it's just commerce. We're still making money.
It's business.
Yeah. The idea is that you're trying to create frictionless buying. You're trying to make it so that people that are used to buying on Amazon and these e-com websites, these are the people that are buying from our company from a B2B perspective. The days of spitting out a purchase order and sending a fax they're
numbered. They're very numbered.
Hopefully numbered. I won't say that it's completely gone. At my last job, that was a very real thing. Like we still, and even today, like we still get fax POs.
Oh my God.
But we wrap technology around that stuff. So we have OCR that's trying to like read these things and get the lines off and digitize it right off the bat. So we don't have to have a person like sitting there typing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's a lot of digital commerce things that are happening now. I think it's just trying to get everybody focused on just that online buying experience, and what that means, and selling that, right? So I think previously, your sales team would go out and they would preach to their contacts and get them to buy, the programs and the products that you want, and they would take those orders.
Yep.
And it was all just very traditional, all very handshake deals. And I think today, people want speed. Once they've established that relationship with your brand, or with your sales team, I don't think they necessarily want to have to go back through your sales rep every time they want to place an order.
Yes.
And I think that's the kind of bridge we need to get over, culturally, right? Like, you're not trying. It's trying to talk to your sales team and be like, hey, we're not trying to steal your thunder. We're trying to enable you to scale, right? Like,
exactly. So instead of taking $1 million of orders, you could probably handle 100 million or 10 million as a sales rep, because you're the relationship, face of the relationship, getting them to trust the brand. And then most of the orders can be placed online. The way I kind of like to phrase it to people is, you have two roles. You have, and you could either split these up into two different sales roles, or have one, great sales guy that can do both. And it's building the trust, getting the relationships in, like, pretend I'm selling for Lippert components. Hey, we have these awesome components. You need to buy our stuff. This is why it's the best. Get them on the website, and then get them like signed up for the program with special pricing. Maybe even negotiate the pricing, and that's part of the sales rep's job. But once they're online, they can kind of buy in. And then so there's like kind of that initial sales role. And then I think the second part of sales in the new B2B e-commerce role is what I call the account manager role, where, let's say, they might look at their sales every month and say, oh, these guys bought this, but they didn't know maybe they should buy this too. Like, give them a call. Hey, like, did you know we also have these products? Or, I noticed you bought this. Like, what if we got you, some better pricing on this thing? Basically kind of like facilitating the relationship and consulting with them and trying to upsell them on future things, and be a little bit more than just the website, obviously. So there's still a very important human component to that. But I kind of look at it as like almost like two different roles. But to your point, just the simple order taker aspect of things, people want speed, and it's just easy to order online, or
Right.
it can be easy to order online.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't want to downplay it, because it's easy to order online if you do the right things to build it so that they can order online, which isn't necessarily so easy to build.
Unfortunately, I think sometimes we overcomplicate process. And since this is the hard truth about B2B e-commerce,
tell us the hard truth. Tell us the hard truth about overcomplicating.
I have to keep it clean, right? PG.
I don't want your bosses yelling at you. So you guys are public companies. So let's keep this very broad. And tell us about some processes that
I get very passionate about this stuff.
Tell us about some like high level, processes that you think you've seen that were overcomplicated, in ways that you think they could be simplified. And this could apply to anyone, it doesn't have to be your use case.
I think from a general sense, in the B2B space and even in the B2C space, we assume that the people we're doing business with know about our internal company and our internal process and our internal teams. And so
and they don't.
They don't give two craps about what they have a problem they need to solve, and they're reaching out to you, and they want to get to a resolution, or they want to get to a product or a replacement part. They don't care that when they engage you in a chat bot, that you have to select the right department. That you arbitrarily assigned,
or that you have to check a box in your ERP system and then go validate something in SAP or NetSuite or whatever the systems are. They don't care about that. They just want the product and the price and it to be delivered successfully.
And you have to almost sort of read the future. Like, you have to kind of look ahead and expect, like, what can we do ahead of time for our customers to empower them to interact with our brand in that way and to buy from us? What has to be true for someone to just go to our site and buy? So then you start to stand up process, but you don't make your customer wade through that. through that process to onboard, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I like the way you're saying it. I like to look at it as like, how can you, and you can still have complicated processes on the back end for
Mm-hmm.
whatever
Oh
reason.
yeah.
But how can you make the process for the customer as easy and pleasant as possible on the front facing side? So all
Mm-hmm.
they see is, hey, I was able to get online, quickly order, blah, blah, blah,
Mm-hmm.
and buy. And I think what you're getting at is that where B2B goes wrong is they take their super complicated processes and put that online and put that in front
Right.
of the customer.
Yeah.
And then the customer's like, I had to go through 18 steps to place
Yeah.
an order when I should be able to go through this in 3 steps.
Yeah.
So like the UI UX component of it is bad. They're thinking that they just can put all their operations online, but in some
Mm-hmm.
ways that almost backfires if it's too complicated and cumbersome for the customer. Is that kind of what you're what you're getting at?
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes it can be hard. Like you're not going to be able to automate everything. I mean, certain companies like ours, we make complicated products that
Yeah.
they're complex. There's a lot of moving pieces. If you order the wrong thing, you're going to have a bad time. So, I mean, it's okay. I think it's okay for certain like product lines or certain segments to, take a customer through a more handheld journey.
I agree, and maybe more personalized, and maybe a lot of human interaction for that.
Right. But I think it's about connecting them to the right person they need to be talking to quickly and having a good process around following up with that person, right?
Yeah.
So I think that maybe that's another. I think when people think about B2B e-commerce, they think they have to have it all figured out right away and everything has to be, automated and zero touch and get it so the customer never really has to call us. Sometimes there's a place for customers to call you and and for you to
Absolutely.
interact with them. I think the goal for B2B e-commerce is to this should be a drinking game. Every time B2B e-commerce, take a shot.
We'd be very drunk by the end of this. It would be the most useless podcast ever. We wouldn't be able to talk.
Yeah. No, I think the goal is to let the calls through that matter, right?
Yes.
Automate the boring stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
Automate stuff that should be Amazon, like, click,
Mm-hmm.
Find my product, add to cart, buy, simpler stuff. I think that I agree. I actually think it should be part of your sales strategy in B2B to be easily accessible by phone, because you're not Amazon. Like, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
yes, Amazon does B2B, but like for 99.999% of everyone else, you're not Amazon. So you
Right.
cannot be at their level of automation. You will never get to that level anytime soon. Maybe you're the next Alibaba, Amazon, maybe, but that's extremely unlikely, right? So
Yeah.
I think your best sales strategy is make it easy, make it automated, but be easily accessible. So if there is a problem, like I would love that if I can get on the phone in a minute with someone. And me and my girlfriend have like a little side business. I think I was telling you about this before, and we've been doing a lot of ordering online. And
Mm-hmm.
it's so frustrating when it's hard to get people on the phone and orders get delayed and you just don't get good information. But if you're a small business or even mid-sized enterprise like you guys, I think being able to get on the phone for important things, obviously,
Mm-hmm.
if it's like things that should be done online and then you don't waste a ton of customer service time, but being easily accessible on the phone, I think, is still very important, to your point.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the key to that boring stuff is your catalog.
Yeah. I was gonna bring that up. Yeah, I mean, we could probably spend like 4 hours talking about this and take 100 shots because of how much frustration we've had with catalogs. I mean, I can't tell you just painfully how many, every time I preach to our team, like, get the client, work with them on product data, make sure the product data is on the site, because we cannot go live without that. And then inevitably,
Mm-hmm.
there's always that handful of clients, because we work with a lot of clients, not like one client. So there's always that handful of clients that's just like, no matter how hard you try, they just can't get their product data on the website, like, or it takes them so long. It takes them a year instead of 6 months or 3 months. So
Mm-hmm.
tell us about product data and what you've seen. I mean, I think from you've started in the early days and then you've gotten more sophisticated. So I want to hear kind of like some of
Yeah,
your.
I mean, back when I first started, it was we would just do it right in our ecom platform, right? Like right in Magento or
Yeah.
solution or whatever we were using. But when you start getting into needing to bulk edit items, then you start needing a real like product information system.
Yeah.
Um, and so uh, the job I had previous to this was in aftermarket automotive, and I don't know if you're familiar with automotive in general.
I am. Yeah. We do some of
It's
that. Yeah.
it's extremely catalog driven, right?
For
Because
sure. Everything's
every
car
yeah
part. Yeah. Keep going. Sorry.
yeah what kind of car do you have? What trim package does it have? What engine does it have? Because all that it's all mapped, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Catalog is king, and the
Yeah.
catalogs are sent
And
to.
there's so many SKUs, like
Hmm.
millions and millions and millions of these little
Hmm.
parts, right?
Hmm. The big thing I learned about in that role was how important attribution is on your products. How important it is to talk about what the product's made of, um, what it goes well with, um, human readable names. Like you don't even have to get complicated, but just human readable names and descriptions, right? Like nobody wants to see X.685-23 hyphen bolt
I think
assembly
that goes
as
back
the
to your.
name,
I think that
right?
goes back to the internal processes. The company thinks, hey, we know what that is because internally
Yeah.
we know what
Oh yeah.
X23, blah, blah. The
Yeah.
customer does not understand your internal SKU names. They
No.
don't get that. And they don't
No.
want that. They want what it is. Explain it
Hmm.
to me in layman's terms. It's the Toyota Model 3, whatever it is,
Yep.
part that I want to order.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, I totally agree. And I kind of preached that. We did a talk. We actually did like kind of a lessons learned from the podcast.
Hmm.
And the first thing I try to distill it into 5 steps. And before step one, like there's kind of like the culture aspect of like build the team and you need to select a platform. But let's say you've selected your platform, and then I say like literally step one, just focus on step one as product data. Like it might take you a year, and like I would argue that you might not even need an e-commerce website in year one. If you have a lot of work to do on product data, I would argue that you could literally just build a really nice catalog site
Hmm.
as a sales tool to be like, hey, look, you can find all of our products easily. Maybe
Yep.
you can't buy them right now, but at least that's like a good starting point in my opinion.
Yeah, the thing to think about with a catalog, and especially when you start getting into like using a PIM, is that syndication is the real power.
Yes.
So the ability to house your catalog data in one place and send it out to your data receivers or subscribers or vendors or
Yep.
resellers, whatever, right? That's the real power. And
Yeah.
when we did our Lippert store, 6 months of that project was just the content team going SKU
Product
by
data.
SKU
Yep.
and getting. I mean, we were using like badly rendered CAD drawings for product images, like, and it worked. Like, yeah, you could tell what it was, but it didn't. It wasn't great.
Yeah. I know
So
a lot about, I've seen a lot of
yeah,
that.
yeah, it's pretty
um,
common, and it works, but you really want that like good imagery, and you can't send that crap to Amazon. Like if you're going to sell any of your parts on Amazon, they're not going to take those level of images. So why not spend the time, line up 100 parts and just like go through,
so
take
can you,
pictures of everything, and
Can you talk about that and more like, can you tell what's the magnitude of how many SKUs, how many people working? I think that's where people go wrong is they don't realize how much work this is.
mm-hmm,
And I see this all the time. They got one guy trying to do 100,000 products and it's just like
mm-hmm,
one guy, and he's trying to do the e-commerce website. It's like
right,
just these absolutely unrealistic expectations around how much work it is. And so could you
yeah,
talk a little bit about that? I just want people to kind of
yeah,
understand like,
and that touches on culture too, because we have content specialists. Their job is to basically wrangle this content because they're not necessarily SEO writers.
yes.
They're not necessarily mechanics, right?
Yeah.
So how does a content specialist assemble this stuff? Well, they rely on our other teammates. So we have a technical institute, technical publications department that they work with very often, right? Getting manuals, getting information about the products, what's it compatible with, what are the features. They're working with sales, right? Because sales is like, here's the here's the 8 bullet points I want every customer to know about this product and why it's awesome and better than our
Yeah,
competitors.
yeah,
They're working with marketing because they need SEO content, right? They need good, optimized, keyword rich
Yep.
descriptions. Photography. We have a psych wall and we have a couple photo booth type setups, and we get products go into our marketing department in a near constant, churn, right? Because we have about 15,000 web-enabled SKUs right now in our store, which is pretty small compared to a lot of stores. And that's not even our full, even close to our actual item master. Like,
Yeah.
we manufacture millions of SKUs, but our aftermarket is really what we serve through our web store,
Yeah.
especially B2C.
Yeah.
As we get more B2B, it becomes like stuff that goes into the service life cycle. So
Yep. Yep.
it's replacement parts and that
Yeah.
kind of
You don't
stuff.
need every single possible SKU on the website. You need, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
So,
that, yeah, go ahead.
I want to have some questions because you guys are pretty sophisticated. Let's be honest. Like, you're a $2 billion company or whatever, more than that maybe, and you guys have this content team, you have photography, you have, the technical team, you have all these different people. Going back to some of your previous roles and just to help, let's say you're a 50 million or $100 million distributor,
Mhm.
and you can't quite do what you guys are doing just because you probably don't have the firepower yet. Like, what would you recommend that they start with, or how would you kind of approach that? Because I think you have to start somewhere, and you can't do everything all at once.
Yeah. I mean, they say don't try to eat the whole elephant. I don't know whoever came up with that, but
I like that. That's like my first time hearing that. So
what? Yeah.
I
Don't. How do you eat an elephant? You never heard that?
I
One bite at a time.
we're in, I think I might have heard that, but I don't know. We're in Boston. We have weird sayings here, so I don't know.
Yeah. I think the key is don't try to tackle it all at once. Take your top 10 highest moving SKUs and just decide, like, okay, we're going to take these 10 products, we're going to take new pictures of them, we're going to look at every name and description and just give it like a once over. Like, how can I make this more human readable? How can I add attributes about this product? Like, is it made of aluminum? If it's a wheel hub, how many lug nuts are there on the thing, so that
Yeah.
customers can, like, what about it?
Yeah, exactly.
Customer
Because
identify, right?
people spend a lot of time on these product pages. Like,
Mm-hmm.
people don't realize it's like when you're searching, sometimes people spend hours looking at different product pages to figure out
Mm-hmm.
what they want. So you really got to be detailed. But what you're saying, I think, is really important. Are you, and obviously there's always edge cases, but generally, in a very general sense, are you suggesting, if you have let's say you have 100,000 products, but it's going to be too overwhelming to get them all on the website, start with maybe the top 1,000, or start somewhere and perfect that first and then build off
Mm-hmm.
of that? That's kind of what you're.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And focus on, especially in B2B, I guess it depends what you're selling, right? Because if you're selling replacement parts, focus solely on identification. Like, is this the right part? Get a good picture of it, get good information about it, get cross-reference numbers. Go to your competitors and find compatible parts and list their part numbers on your product pages.
Interesting.
Because people are going to be Google searching, right? They're going to find a competitor's part of yours, and they're going to be looking for that part number directly. They're even going to do it in your site, and that's another way to source what products you should enrich. Is look at your site search results and look at your
Yes.
Google search terms, because people are looking for part numbers.
Yeah. So
Um,
because we're gonna run out of time, and like I said, we probably could spend 4 hours talking about product data and
mhm.
take a bunch of shots for every time we say B2B e-commerce and product data.
Data B2B. Yeah,
Yeah, we'll have to do another episode, a drinking episode, and maybe we don't. We'll see how it goes, and if it's too bad, we won't air it, right?
sure. It'll be on a secret channel.
Yeah, it'll be the secret YouTube that no one goes to. But let's kind of change gears a little bit, and there's a lot that goes into product data. But let's talk about some of the technical challenges, which to kind of wrap up product data. I think there's a place for a PIM when you're definitely at your size or even smaller. But I think when you're a little bit smaller, you might not be ready for a PIM. So like, where do you kind of make these decisions as a technical leader of a company? Like, hey, let's start with just, you know, Magento or whatever it is, BigCommerce or Salesforce, whatever platform they've decided, you know.
I think it boils down to features, right? What's the experience you want to offer your customer? What does the platform offer out of box? How much is it going to cost you to customize it? How much is it going to cost you to host it?
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, so it's kind of a budget thing, budget and time.
Yeah.
Like if you can't afford the ecom platform and the PIM, like you're not ready for the PIM. Like, and
Right.
I think you got to factor in all the costs that make go in. Like, it's not just the cost of the software. It's like putting the effort to make the software useful is actually
Mhm.
probably more expensive than the software itself, I would
Yeah.
say.
Does it integrate with whatever e-commerce
Yeah.
platform you have, right? Or do you have to build a connector?
Yeah.
Which, which
Let's
you and
dive
I.
into let's dive into the technical challenges around B2B, because integrations, one of the things that I did really early on, I got into B2B e-commerce in 2012, like in the very early part of my career. Because I really believed, I was actually an SEO guy and I was doing SEO for all these small businesses. And what I realized quickly, I was like, your SEO, you need product data. You're not going to rank without product data on the website or better content. So then I started getting, then I was like, well, you kind of need e-commerce to do this. So then I started kind of like realize that e-commerce was where I wanted to be. And then I saw the opportunity in B2B. And a lot of that, what I tried to do is really get strong at the integration side of things, because I started to realize pretty early on that B2B companies are all very tied to generally legacy systems. You know, they've been around for 100 years. They have some
Mhm.
old ERP. Maybe they have a new PIM. And I think the biggest technical challenge in B2B e-commerce is definitely integrations. Maybe
Yeah.
would you agree, or that's my experience? But
Yeah.
I'm
I
kind of
would.
on the vendor side, so you're on the merchant side. So
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. And it only gets harder as you get bigger as a company.
yeah,
Um, I think you can get away without integrations at a smaller company,
yeah,
depending on how much info you really need passed around. Like
yeah.
when I
Just
was at
man,
a
yeah,
when I was at a $12 million company, Magento was the book of record. We didn't
yeah.
synchronize to a back office or an ERP, right?
Yeah,
But
and I don't think that's necessarily that bad of a decision at a $12 million company.
right.
But at some point, when you want to become a 20 or $50 million company,
Hmm.
you eventually need to bring in a NetSuite or
Yep.
whatever other system it is, which we see all the time. Then you got to integrate into the NetSuite inside of things. So let's
Mhm.
talk. I think ERP is. Can we talk a little bit about that, and then we'll go back to the other integrations on the
Yeah.
PIM side? But what have you seen on the ERP side of things with integrations? What have you guys?
Um, well, right now for us at Lippert, we're having conversations about just distributed order management, because we're a growth through acquisitions company.
Yeah.
So what ends up happening is we have a core ERP platform.
Yep.
We're on, we run Dynamics 365,
Yep.
but we acquire companies and who knows what they're
Yeah,
running.
they could have anything. Yeah, some
Right.
random
I
old
mean, so
AS400.
Sightline, yeah, yeah, yes, literally, yes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Dealing with that right now.
yeah.
So
We've done a few AS400 integrations. I mean, it's more like a batch file
yeah,
cron
it's a
job.
lot of there's a lot of flat files still getting sent around.
Yeah.
I hope what like my vision for the future is like the death of the CSV file.
Only API, only like REST API and JSON and GraphQL, like or only
Ra-
GraphQL. Yeah.
or messages, right? Like
Yeah.
let's hook up RabbitMQ or
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
some other sort of asynchronous like communication between systems.
So how did you guys, and I don't want you to get in trouble here with telling too many of the secret sauce of your company, but just in general terms, how would you integrate in an ideal scenario your ERP, which is typically your accounting system, inventory? Like,
Mhm.
what did you guys do around inventory pricing? Did you guys do live pricing? Did you synchronize pricing? And
We do everything in batch loads. So we get flat files of CSV files of items and price. Now, so it's kind of complicated, right? Because our items in the ERP are ugly, which we just talked about catalog, right?
Yeah.
So we send our items to our PIM
Yeah.
first. And then our content team enriches and does all that fun stuff. And then we get a product feed from our PIM that we ingest into our Magento store.
Yep.
Pricing is a separate process that's kind of, it merges the product data coming from the PIM in with the most recent pricing, which we get
From the ERP
from the ERP,
yeah.
because we deal with, it's B2B, so you have price groups and tiered pricing and all that good stuff.
Customer specific pricing and
Mm-hmm,
things like that. Yeah, absolutely. And do you guys actually use the Magento B2b module? Like, do you have like company specific shared catalog pricing, or how
we
deep?
don't have company specific. We've pretty much been lucky in the fact that we have like 5 tiers.
Okay, so you've kept it at like more of a customer group, kind of like rule-based level.
Yeah, we're using shared catalogs, but it's we've kept it at tiers.
Yeah, and the shared catalogs for you is more like specific catalogs, like products and stuff like that, or user experiences.
Yeah, sorry, somebody called me in the middle of this. Yeah, so the shared catalogs are exactly, we have distributor and dealer level catalogs, and we can enable or disable products.
Yeah. So it's more of a product thing, less of a pricing thing for you guys.
Right.
Yeah, gotcha. So because this is where I think the integrations and the technical challenges get really complicated, because what I see is if you want to evolve, eventually you need e-commerce. So it could be, Shopify, BigCommerce, Magento, Salesforce, let's just, the top 10 platforms. You're probably going to pick one of those 10, right? And then, so that's one. And then you're going to probably have your ERP, which is, Microsoft Dynamics, NetSuite, SAP. I've seen literally everything, but you're probably going to have one of the top 10 or 20 ERPs, right?
Yeah.
Then as you evolve, you're probably going to need a PIM, because ERPs can't handle product data well. E-com platforms can't handle the syndication and the bulk editing and all the things that you need. You guys, I believe, use Soulsify, but obviously a lot of PIMs out there. Soulsify is one of the kind of the top performing ones. So now you have PIM, ERP, e-com, and then I think a lot of companies we're seeing too might have Salesforce or
and we have that.
Yep. So now you have 4 major enterprise systems. And there's more than that. That just to like So,
you haven't even hit the engineering side, because if you're a manufacturing company, you have product lifecycle management. So,
oh my God, yeah.
So you have a whole engineering suite of applications where the products are actually born and designed, right?
Yes.
Go into manufacturing. So, so it's like PLM feeds ERP, feeds PIM, feeds everything else.
Yeah. So I think that what companies need to do is they need to take a step back and think like, what's the ideal scenario? Like, because the problem is they get so tied into these systems, and then they're trying to, wrap band-aids around all these systems instead of like, all right, let's start from the ground up. In theory, like I think it's a good exercise for companies to say like, what's the theoretically best way to do this? And I personally believe the future is headless commerce, which I want to get into with you. And we're putting a lot of effort in that. We obviously, most of our clients are not headless, but we have several flagship clients that are headless. They're doing very well. We just rebuilt our site to be headless. It's just WordPress, so it's not like that fancy.
Nice.
But we're going to be building e-commerce because we actually have some ideas around e-commerce. We want to show people like, hey, look at the things we can do with e-commerce, even though, we're traditionally services. But the reason I believe headless is the ideal scenario for this is you have all these different systems. Let's call it 4 or 5 major systems, right? E-com platform, PIM, ERP, CRM, and maybe it's the manufacturing suite that I'm not an expert on that, but I'll take your word for it. It sounds very complicated. So that you have kind of the life cycle system, or could be another system if you're a different kind of company, right? Like, so call it 5 different systems. What I believe the future of e-commerce should be, and if you have the money and time and the thought to do this, you have your headless kind of React layer. So your React, let's call it React, because I think that's kind of where headless is going. I mean, it could be Vue, it could be Angular, but it's probably going to be React on the front end. And then basically you can kind of have everything tie up to that in real time. But that's where I think the challenge is. is, can you get the data in real time? Most of the ecom
Yeah.
platforms, Magento, Shopify, BigCommerce, they're already moving very fast in this direction. So I think that's very achievable. But I
Mhm.
think where it's probably a limitation is like if you're on an old version of Microsoft Dynamics, you're probably not going to be able to get real-time data from one of these old systems,
Yeah, yeah. It becomes a what's good enough is generally the conversation we have a lot. Like, okay, so we can't do real time because that's not realistic from a performance perspective. But what's good enough?
What's
Like,
acceptable?
right? What's an acceptable limit? Like, how often do we really need to send inventory updates?
Yeah.
Right? Like we're not Amazon level where like inventory is churning like by the minute.
Yeah,
We're
the millisecond.
the millisecond. Like, let's be real with ourselves. Do we really need that level of
Yeah.
visibility?
You're
I think
saying you don't own AWS? You're saying you don't own a bajillion dollars of
no,
servers and
no,
computing power?
no, not at all, not at all. We fake it hard. But I agree though. I think the commerce engine and the core business logic that drives your various stores, and so we're in Magento, so I always think of like a core commerce Magento installation that can serve many websites, but the
Yeah.
front end of those is separate applications
Yeah.
in
React
in a
or
headless, yeah, right.
yeah.
Because things like B2B commerce using Magento, that's a lot of stuff to build in a headless format. So maybe this is kind of what I've been thinking through lately is like maybe B2B, it makes sense to just keep core like Luma and the Magento-y things because they're going to support all those features from a
Yeah.
theme perspective. But we have brands, and I don't think I told you this. We have a punching bag brand. We have a fitness brand
Nice.
called Aqua Training Bag, and that's a B2C, totally B2C brand.
Yeah.
We hardly sell B2B at all with that website, but it sits in. But that would be an awesome thing to have as a headless
Yeah, just an experience
thing
that
or
is like a layer
whatever.
on top of Magento,
Mm-hmm.
and the product data could be powered from Magento and the cart
Right.
and the checkout or whatever it
Mm-hmm.
is.
Mm-hmm.
But I think what you're getting at, and this is where it gets tricky, and I think we're still in the very early stages, but I want companies to start thinking about this because I think next year we're going to see a bigger shift towards this. Is you could probably start to build out, and it depends on where you're at, but like you said, a lot of the Luma level stuff, which is kind of your default e-commerce theme stuff in React, you could now they have PWA Studio, so you could do a lot of that in the React side of things, and then pull in potentially B2B level functionality from your ERP, or maybe you have to build a little bit of an integration middleware layer to kind of
Mm-hmm.
like speed up the data processing to bring it to the front end. But you could
Well,
potentially have live pricing or just have pricing go directly from like maybe you don't need pricing in Magento. You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
you could have pricing come directly from the ERP, which is where I think single source of truth is where you want to get to. Because when you have to
yeah,
integrate everything together, it just becomes a huge mess because you have like,
yeah. I think the pain point for us is the development cycle, because there'll be times where marketing really wants a hot change on the front end, like yesterday they need to not like content, like we want a design change that's like involves code, right?
yeah.
But like, oh, I'm sorry, we can't release that because we just installed Magento 236 or 236 or 241, and we're in UAT right now, and we're probably going to be stuck there for like a month, so you're going to have to wait.
Yeah.
That's a hard conversation to keep having for the rest of my life that I don't want, right? So I think what headless will open up, or even just decoupled front end,
Yes.
or PWAs will be like, yes, we can develop that front end feature and deploy it immediately for you.
And what we're doing, and what's been very successful for us with our headless clients, like I said, it's still a smaller percentage of clients, is the CMS. We all know e-com platforms are not the best CMSs. Doesn't
Right.
matter if you go with Shopify or Magento.
Mm-hmm.
The best CMSs are WordPress, Contentful, some of these other just pure CMS plays. And
Mm-hmm.
that could be a separate application that just powers, the homepage images, certain imagery, and then they could go in and change those in real time. And we're doing that pretty successfully, because you might have more content level pages, especially in B2C, like that Aqua brand you're talking about might have all these like fancy content pages to describe the product. A little bit less important, obviously, in B2B, but yeah, I think you open up the possibility of, and one of our former guests, they're pretty far along with this. They're very custom. They have a custom React, custom a lot of stuff. It's more of like a tech company. He's building kind of like a B2B marketplace, and he's all React on the front end. And then he basically just looks at every like operation and just like, okay, this system does this purpose and it goes to the front end. This system does this. And that's kind of where I think things should be going, is like, the ecom platform has a certain purpose, ERP has pricing, and that's where you just got to figure out the challenges, right? Because if you can't get the real-time pricing in, then that doesn't work, right? So you have to figure out, like, how do you get these different systems to bring the data in real time to the front end that's fast enough where I can get it in a second or 2 seconds, because I don't want to wait 5 minutes.
We've kind of made going back to culture and collaboration across teams, right, and departments. We've had to make concessions and deals with like the pricing team, because hey guys, you can't end date a price at 3:00 in the afternoon on that day and then load a new price that's at that same moment. Like, you can't do that. You have to end date the price for midnight and then load a new price in for tomorrow. That way our batch process can pick it up and load the pricing. Like, there's process around some of this stuff too. Like,
but if you can build out this kind of real-time integration to the front end in React, you wouldn't need to do that if you could pull in real-time pricing. But it's tough, because then you got to do a customer lookup, and you got to look up.
Well, I'm even talking back to ERP integration, right?
Yeah.
So I'm even going back before you even get to the commerce layer. Like,
okay, gotcha.
In ERP, where they're loading prices, like, that goes back to that integration between ERP and your commerce platform. You have to keep those things in sync.
But what I'm saying is, if you can go straight to the front end, in theory, I guess it might be tricky here, because you wouldn't be able to. You still might need the price in Magento to process the payments, but but in theory, like, you could at least display the price on the cart in real time without it necessarily being in the e-commerce platform. And then you have to figure out, how you might want to do. So I think you could definitely do a real-time lookup on the customer and bring in price onto the front end. And then you just kind of have to figure out, like, how do you make sure that it's being processed properly so the price is accurate in the cart or checkout and all that. But you see what I'm saying? I'm like wondering, you can start to think about, how do we decouple these things so that we don't have to integrate everything, because if the ERP is a master price record, ideally that's it. You don't have to worry about it. Just needs to go to the front end so the customer can view it.
I think the only danger is scale, right? Like, and performance, because if your site traffic bumps up to 1,000 users, right?
Like, and it's doing 100,000 concurrent lookups of the customer to get the that's definitely, and that's kind of just comes back to the limitation of all this in theory and headless. It really, I think headless is there from a React like front end standpoint. The limitation is really the integration, the API layer, the middleware layer. Because if you can't get the data fast enough, then it's pretty much useless, right? And I think that's what's stopping a lot of companies from moving forward with headless, whether they know it or not.
That's interesting. Yeah.
And it's just not cheap to build right now. Like, we're working actually very hard to make it cheaper. So we're working on our own internal, systems and things to make it so that we can scale it out and build it faster. But in general, like, it's, we quote a little bit higher for a headless build than a non-headless build, because there's just some extra tooling and things that we have to kind of build out. And you can't just like plop in an app or an extension and expect it to like perfectly work. You have to kind of like
build all that stuff.
Exactly. So we talked a good amount about integrations and headless and then technical challenges. I want to get more. You've given some like really good insight, I think, in many different areas. But what are some of the like other lessons that maybe we didn't touch on? just any other advice that you'd have, whether it doesn't have to be technical, it could be really whatever in terms of what you've learned in B2B e-commerce that we didn't touch on. Anything that,
Man, I think, I think it's, that's a good one. There's so much.
What about user experience? We didn't really talk about marketing and user experience. So like, let's say you more or less solve these technical challenges, which are very hard and probably you're going to have to spend a lot of money. I think that's the other thing people don't realize. Like, engineers are not cheap. You can't just like, pay someone $20 an hour and solve all these problems. You can try, but it's probably not going to work. But let's just say you kind of get through a lot of these technical challenges. Do you think that, I like to say like user experience is important, but it's not necessarily should be the immediate focus. I think you can kind of get by with a kind of a mediocre user experience in the beginning from like, it doesn't have to be a flashy design, just kind of functional. But then as you guys have gotten more sophisticated, have you invested more into that?
Yeah, I think the key is to listen to your user base and try to connect with your customers that are heavier users of your platform.
Gotcha.
They're going to tell you what they want. They're not bashful usually, because you almost have to think of in a B2B world, you have to think of your website as a system that they use every day to do their job.
Yeah.
Right.
That's really good. Yeah. Like your procurement, you might be the procurement department. Yeah.
Yeah. So like when you take that approach to it, it kind of changes a little bit, right? Like it's not like a random user that might show up on your e-store. It's now like, this is an application that our customers use to do business with us.
Yeah. That's a really good point. And I think this gets into a point that, we should touch on more, because basically in theory, what might be really successful is if your sales reps are really in tune with the customer and their experience on the website, they should be facilitating the feedback loop to you and your team, being like, yeah, hey, customer XYZ said we really need this feature because every time they order, it takes them 10 minutes, but if we built this feature, it'd take them 5 minutes, or you'd save them a bunch of time. So that's where the sales reps could be getting in tune with the customers, bring that back to the engineers or the development team, driving forward new features, better user experience. And I think it's all about that iteration. I think that's where people go wrong, is they try and we've seen this where, like you said, you can't eat the elephant in one bite. Going back to that. Yeah.
Just start. Just put something out there. And
get
feedback from it. Yeah. That's all you need to do.
As long as you can add to cart, check out, and buy, like that's enough to start. Like if you can process a payment,
and place order is you can now start to add other things. I have a funny anecdote. Like in my last job, they asked me, they said, David, we have this catalog. This is the automotive company.
Yeah.
We have this catalog, but it's not that great. It's really slow. What we'd like is the ability for people to look up products and get information about them, and then submit a request to us for us to enter an order for them. And I said, okay, so it sounds like you want an e-commerce site. No, we don't want e-commerce. I'm like, okay, it sounds like e-commerce with extra steps. So we ended up building a Magento site that wasn't e-commerce. That was just a catalog site where people could request orders. And it evolved into just a B2B e-commerce site.
I love that, because I've literally dealt with customers who are like, no, we don't want to give them pricing. They need to request a quote. We don't want to give them pricing. They need to request a quote. And I was like, okay, so is everything custom pricing? Well, no, we could probably standardize the pricing. It's like, so you're telling me that you could standardize the pricing and make it so they could add to cart and buy in real time instead of requesting a quote? Well, kind of. So you're telling me that you should probably have e-commerce. Well, no. We want to make sure our customers talk to us. That's what they start saying. Well, then what if they don't talk to us? It's like, good. They're buying stuff from you.
Right. I think maybe we've stumbled upon something like that aversion to e-commerce is that they don't want to put the customer at an arm length.
They're scared they're going to lose the customer, when ironically it's actually the opposite, because if you do a good job, they'll buy from you. They'll like the buying, and you can still call them. You can still get their information. You can still email them. You can still there's many ways to continue the relationship. I get calls, what people don't realize what's happening is if they don't do this, in my opinion, I call it, you know how there's the retail apocalypse?
Mm-hmm.
We'll call it right now. I'm predicting the B2B apocalypse of this decade.
Man.
Like 2010 to 2020 was like the retail apocalypse, right? Like Amazon took over, all these companies just like went out of business, and you're still seeing it. And I feel like we're kind of like coming out of that, where people kind of just like, no, it's like, it's already happened. Like retail is kind of sort of dead. Like it's not coming back. It's going online. We'll still have stores, but it's not going to be what I think that's going to happen in B2B in the next decade, and the reason for that is because companies like Wayfair is a good example. You don't think about Wayfair as a competitor, but they are for a lot of, and people don't realize this, they're a competitor for a lot of B2B companies, and they're not great at it, but they're going to get better, and they're probably going to get better than most B2B companies. And the reason for that is they already have e-commerce. I went on, when we got our new office, got a Trellis account instantly for a B2B account, ordered with somewhat special pricing, and immediately got called by an account rep. And they constantly call me. They stopped calling me once they realized that I wasn't going to order that much furniture. But the point is, they're a B2C company transitioning to B2B that was selling me pretty hard. And I'm just like a small business. So imagine what they're doing with the big companies that can spend millions on furniture or whatever it is. Or they were even like, hey, do you want like walling and things to like build stuff? They were like pitching me on that. I'm like, we're not a construction company, but
I'm curious if you talk to B2B companies that are having to think about speed to delivery, like are they having to try to offer Amazon level service or close to it?
I mean, they don't have to, but I think it's just in the sense of that's where the market is moving. And if you don't get faster with delivery, people stop ordering from you. Like if I can go and find something that can be ordered in half the time for the same price, why would I not do that?
Right.
So I just think inevitably, if you're really slow with delivery and expectations and experience, that's where I think the B2B apocalypse is coming. Like and in the next 5-10 years, it's going to get so fast to be able to order like, give me a part number or an item, and then in 5 to 10 years, I will be able to Google that item, create a business account in real time, and probably order that item from almost anywhere in 10 years, right?
Yeah.
Because there's just so many companies out there, and there's so many, you have some unique things that you can only get from one manufacturer. But in general, I think we're moving in that direction where anything you can think of, you can kind of like find and get it in pretty close to real time, even as a B2B customer in volume too. So I think that's the last step. Once the volume is like, I can get like 100 pallets of this thing in like a week or something, then that's when the apocalypse will really happen.
Yeah. I think
so we're going to scare everyone on this podcast.
Yeah.
But I'm saying this because now you have time. And actually there's a B2B guy that's really, he said this on our event. He's like, you have time, but you don't have that much time. Like you don't have 10 years. So if you don't get on top of this now, in 10 years, you cannot catch up, because you cannot build a content team that you guys have. Like you guys are already pretty far along in a lot of ways compared to a lot of companies. You won't in 10 years, you guys will be so far ahead that the smaller companies they will never be able to build that level of sophistication fast enough. And so that's why I think you really have to start now and take it super seriously.
Sit down and think about the hard truths.
The hard truth about B2B eCommerce. I'm not trying to scare people, but I want people to be motivated to make an effort at this stuff. And there are people out there like you that they can hire. It's not like you just have to figure this out on your own. Like you can hire an agency like Trellis. You can hire lots of good internal, technical people. There are people looking for jobs. Like it's not like they're
there's people in this space for sure.
Yeah. And and you can, you know, train people, you can get advice. It's not too late, but I do believe that it will eventually be too late, where just like, I mean, if you're retail right now and you don't have a good e-commerce presence, I mean, probably not going to
Yeah.
survive.
No. No.
Unless you're like maybe a
Soup.
convenience store, but even that, like, who knows, like that could be delivery soon, more and more.
Unless you're groceries.
Yeah.
That's the whole other thing is delivery. Oh gosh. It's a whole world of curbside pickup and delivery and all those kinds of things. Oh my gosh.
Probably spend a whole like week talking about that.
Oh man. I think that can overwhelm people just trying to think about all the things. And yeah, I think just keep it simple. Just start somewhere, and just
I agree.
iterate.
I agree. I think that's what is stopping people is they're like, I need to build Granger. I need to build Amazon. It's
Yeah,
like,
we need to be Amazon. I'm like, okay, well, do you have $100 million? Because it's going to take $100 million.
Yeah, and even that is like not enough. Like
to start.
Just to start. Yeah. So yeah, it's like that's just going to get you like a part of the way. So I think to your point is you know, get a BigCommerce, get a Shopify, get a Magento, get whatever it is. Get started with a platform. Get a catalog up and running, and start learning.
Start with Excel.
Yeah, start with Excel. Yeah,
Right.
Here's our product catalog
Google
in Excel.
Docs, Google Sheets, even freer. Like just start putting your data. Actually, Airtable would be a really good option.
Airtable. Build an Airtable website.
Build an Airtable of your product catalog. Just start there.
I love that. I actually think that's genius.
Go no code, right? Because you can export it to something else later.
And then build a React site on top of your Airtable.
Gosh. Oh my gosh.
With a little login screen. We might have just figured out the future of commerce. I think we just solved it.
Oh god, that scares me.
Oh man, this is great. Well, this was so. I know you mentioned before you got a lot of things to take care of at home, and it's the last nice week of the year for us northern folks.
Last weekend of sunshine. What they're saying.
So enjoy the weekend. This was awesome. I would love to get you back on maybe in the future when maybe you've solved some new problems and you have some kind of new insight. You know, we want to kind of start bringing guests back on in the future. So this was awesome. Thank you so much. I really
thanks for having me. I really enjoyed it. This is awesome.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Yeah.